From United Nations headquarters in New York, this is World Chronicle. World Chronicle, a spontaneous, unrehearsed, unedited interview with a senior official whose work is concerned with the developing nations of the world. Today's guest, attending a special session of the United Nations, is the President of the People's Republic of Bangladesh, Ziaur Rahman.
I hope that the food aid by other countries will not be affected as a result of this. This is the time where we need support because we are trying to pick up and stand on our feet, and this is the time that friendly countries got to come forward and give us a helping hand.
In a moment, additional views, opinions and answers to reporters' questions from today's guest on World Chronicle, which is presented by United Nations Radio and Television in cooperation with the UN's Division for Economic and Social Information. Here now is the programme host, news correspondent of the British Broadcasting Corporation, Brian E. Saxton.
Hello and welcome back to another edition of World Chronicle. And here at United Nations headquarters in New York today to interview our guest are three news correspondents. Brennan Jones, correspondent for Interpress Service, the Third World News Agency, Peggy Wilkins of the International Staff of the Wall Street Journal, and Prem Shankar Yar, editor, Financial Express, New Delhi. Our guest today, Ziaur Rahman, the President of Bangladesh, was born in 1936. He became a professional soldier at the age of 17 when he joined the army of Pakistan. In 1971, General Ziaur Rahman led the uprising against Pakistan, which resulted in the independence of East Pakistan and the establishment of the People's Republic of Bangladesh. Following the change of government in 1975, Ziaur Rahman was appointed deputy and later became chief martial law administrator of Bangladesh. In 1978, Bangladesh held its first ever presidential election, and Ziaur Rahman was elected to office by defeating his nearest rival by some 11 million votes. President Ziaur, we're delighted to have you on this edition of World Chronicle, and here with our first question for you is Mr. Jha of the Financial Express in New Delhi.
Mr. President, the question I have to ask you today concerns your statement this morning to the General Assembly, where, if you'll pardon me using the phrase, you dropped a small bombshell as far as the Group of 77 were concerned. In fact, someone listening to you said that it's rather like the chap who told the king that he had no clothes on. I'm referring, of course, to your suggestion that the OPEC countries should cut the price of oil to the developing countries by 50%. Now, from what I've been seeing, a number of people have this very much on their minds, but the Group of 77 were rather hoping, to keep this within the ECDC, the Economic Cooperation for Developing Countries, and not to air it here. Now, what were your reasons for doing this, and how have you been received?
Well, that's for you to judge how I have been received as far as this is concerned. But countries like ours, the least developed countries, are really badly affected as a result of the general inflation all over the world and the rise in oil price. On the one hand, we are paying far too much price for oil, and on the other hand, we are having to get from the developed countries finished products at higher and higher price. So on the one hand, we are having to pay a much higher bill for oil, and on the other hand, we are having to pay much higher bill for imported products. This has put us off very badly. So we have to find out ways and means by which we can balance up this maladjustment. And it is with this objective that I suggested that the OPEC countries should think of supplying oil at that price level to the least developed countries.
Well, the point is, I think they had rather hoped, if I'm not mistaken, that they would avoid the separation or the isolation of the oil issue or the oil price issue from the other issues of how to recycle the international liquidity, changes in the representation of various countries on the board of governors of IMF and World Bank, and other issues which are structural in nature. Now, your statement seems to have gone against this trend inside the Group of 77. Would you agree with me on that?
I don't think so. These are all interconnected. The price of oil has direct bearing on all other issues related to economy, and especially to the developing and least developed countries. So I think this is right.
Peggy.
Thank you.
Yes. I'd like to ask you about the commodity agreements. Does Bangladesh stand to gain from those? And what do you think of the prospects for coming to some commodity agreements out of the UN session?
Would you just clearly say what you would like to know?
Okay, the agreements that would stabilize prices of commodities, and I assume that you would benefit through jute, for your jute and for your tea, perhaps other commodities. Can you comment on what the United Nations is about to do in terms of stabilizing commodity prices and how Bangladesh could benefit?
Yeah, thank you very much. This is again very important for us, this commodity price agreement, because we find that for our raw products, countries like us are mainly exporting raw material. And for this, unfortunately, we are getting lesser price or not attractive price. So this has decreased our exports in real value. So if an agreement like this is reached through negotiations and understanding, it is going to help countries like ours reasonably well and keep our export balanced, and we can see beforehand and know how much we can earn from our exports. This will help us in planning our production in the country and our export over a period of substantial time.
And specifically, your exports that would benefit would be jute, tea?
Yes, jute, tea, leather.
Leather, yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think the prospects are for an agreement that will benefit the countries?
Well, as I said this morning, it's not an easy thing. But we got to keep moving with the negotiations and find out new formulas which could be acceptable to all the parties, and especially formulas which will, in real term, benefit countries like ours. Here, I would like to say one thing, and that is that some of the countries like ours have a lot of untapped resources, unexplored resources, unutilized resources, natural resources. For our country, we can say, such as the gas, natural gas, good prospect for oil, limestone, coal, which have remained unexplored or fully developed. So, this way, we would be able to foresee our exports and plan our economy.
Mr. President, I'd like to get back to the question about the bombshell that you dropped this morning. The talk in the corridors of the UN and amongst many delegates is that we might see a split here in the group of 77. Are you thinking of trying to take leadership and forming a least developed country bloc to try and move away, a coalition of some sort to deal specifically with your set of problems? And the other question I'd like to ask is, it was hinted by U.S. Ambassador McHenry what the content of your speech would be and that we should watch it closely. Were you consulting with the U.S. government on this, and was there any kind of deal that was struck?
The answer to your first question is that there's nothing like that. This is a thing which have been, I understand, mentioned by others earlier. And we felt that it is better to say it here, and I don't think this has any prospect of splitting the group of 77. And let me tell you, we had no talks with anybody on this count. If anybody said, must have said on their own.
But then how did Ambassador McHenry say with great confidence? He said, I don't want to steal the thunder of President Zia, who will be talking to you a little later, but you should listen to the speech being given by the President of Bangladesh and what he has to say about the energy question and the price of oil. I'm just quoting him.
Well, I think you should ask him to answer this question.
He must have good intelligence.
I'd like to refer to a very interesting magazine article recently, sir, which described you as being the super salesman from Dhaka, taking the message around the world that Bangladesh has a stable government and is emerging as an attractive trading partner for both East and West. Did you see that? And if you didn't, how would you react to that?
Well, I don't know, but during the last 1 or 2 years, I have undertaken trips to really many countries, both in the East and the West. The object, one should have understood that we were colonized for a long period, as a result of which we remain undeveloped, whereas we have tremendous resources. Firstly, the land is so fertile, and in agriculture, our return is so low. As I said a few minutes ago, we have several others, very valuable natural resources which have remained undeveloped, unexplored. For this, we got to talk to people who have the money, who have the technical know-how. And apart from this, being a new country, I had decided to visit as many countries as possible. And I think these visits have really helped us a lot to project Bangladesh in other countries and discuss with those countries' leaders as to how economic cooperation could be built up. And as a result of these visits, our assistance from abroad has increased over the last 2-3 years, and the economy in our country are gradually picking up.
May I come to a related question to this one, which is the one of shall we say, regional cooperation. One of the problems that we all face in common is, in fact, the oil price, if you like, the balance of payments problem. And it seems to me that the best thing what we possibly do is try and the countries most affected, least developed, most seriously affected, doesn't really matter which, that we should try and buy as much from each other and possibly try for better terms. Now, for instance, all the 4 countries of the subcontinent have an interest in tea, in jute, in leather, and textiles to a large extent. And at the same time, at least one of the countries, which is India, is producing many of the products that you would need, for example, cement or textile machinery, at very, very much lower than world prices. Now, what is anything being done? Are you thinking of something towards regional cooperation, or is it all snagged up on big issues like the Farakka barrage and things like that?
You see, you are aware that a few months ago, Bangladesh proposed a forum on the basis of South Asian countries. And this has been well received by the various countries of South Asia region. And the object is that through this forum, we could do many things which will benefit the region as a whole. And under that forum, trade, commerce, and other bilateral relations, regional matters could be discussed, as in case of other regional forums.
I'd like to pursue a question on the issue of food aid, which is certainly an issue in the United States where this can be seen. There's an awful lot of solid documentation that has come up that perhaps too much food aid is going into Bangladesh, that recently the British government curtailed government-to-government aid because of what they saw as some of the abuses there, that the rationing program tends to go to the urban population and to civil service workers, and that it's had a negative effect on agricultural production because it's a disincentive to the producer. How do you respond to those criticisms, and what really is being done?
Right. Let me tell you that up to 1950, our country then, East Pakistan, was self-sufficient in food. And thereafter, till recently, the agriculture sector, not much was done. As a result, with the growth of the population, the requirement of the food went up, but the food production remained low. Now, we have rationing system in our country which is coming over since a long period. Now, the object of our government is to gradually get rid of this rationing system, which is mainly concentrated in the urban areas, but we are trying to sort of distribute more and more in the rural areas. And lately we have started open market operation, whereby at a certain price we sell out in the markets rice and wheat to keep the market price steady. At the same time, we have undertaken special measures to procure a lot of food grains, and right now we have 1.2 million roughly food stock with the government. We are giving a lot of encouragement to the farmers by price support, and in future we are going to do a lot more. The object is ourselves to become self-sufficient food so that we don't have to get really food from abroad. It's not a good thing.
But realistically, you are going to need additional food aid for the next several years. And what is the impact of the British government curtailment?
I'm coming to that point. Let me tell you that we shall be self-sufficient in food earlier than anybody thinks, and we have taken certain measures on that count, and we are beginning to get the results. As far as...
When do you expect food self-sufficiency?
I think in the next 2-3 years' time, or maybe a little more, maybe a little less, because we have launched a sort of special program on this count, and we have got very good results, and the next 1 year will give very solid indication about it. Our objective is not to become self-sufficient alone, but we are going for doubling food production in the next 5-6 years' time from now. For this, we are mobilizing the people to take to voluntary works for re-excavating the silted up canals and rivers with a view to doing irrigation, bringing more and more land under irrigation. And in the last winter, we did massive work on this count, and through voluntary means we brought more than 600,000 acres of land under irrigation, virtually at no cost. And next winter, which is our dry season, we are going to undertake 3 times more than this work. That means we will try about 1.5 million acres to be brought additional under irrigation by unconventional method. So this is a great effort that is coming up in our country. And I hope this question will not arise very much in the near future.
And do you think the British action will affect, well, the U.S. food aid program? Which is
Britain has reduced the food aid as compared to before because of certain other reasons also. But I hope that the food aid by other countries will not be affected as a result of this. This is the time where we need support, because we are trying to pick up and stand on our feet, and this is the time that our friendly countries got to come forward and give us a helping hand in a big way.
Perhaps on that we move into, I think, into another area which is very much in the news these days, Islamic solidarity. As you know, Bangladesh talks constantly of the need for increased solidarity. So I think we do have to ask you the question, how do you view recent events in Afghanistan and Iran as being a potential threat to that solidarity?
Well, the Islamic solidarity is building up, and I hope in the near future we shall be able to overcome these problems through various measures, and I strongly feel that the Islamic solidarity is going to become stronger and stronger in future.
But does the present situation in those 2 specific countries right now concern you deeply?
It does concern, but I don't think Islamic solidarity as such is affected as a result of these two.
May I ask you something on this? The Islamic bomb, the nuclear bomb being so-called constructed in Pakistan, how do you feel about this? I would be rather ambivalent about this. Here's a country that you fought to liberate yourself from a few years ago, and which is building a bomb, which is allegedly an Islamic bomb, and you're most certainly a part of the Islamic group of countries. Well, what would you feel about this?
Well, I know as much as you know, and I understand that they're not making any bomb.
Well, I hope that's so, sir.
This is
better information.
But this question of Islam, which you know is very high in everybody's minds these days, that Islam is in the throes of some kind of renaissance, some change. And there's been an unusually strong emphasis being placed on Islamic solidarity. We're back to this continuous phrase which keeps making the headlines. Isn't there the danger perhaps that this kind of policy might be regarded as sort of isolationist policy?
From what?
From getting away to that old Islamic concept of greater cooperation and contact between nations.
I don't think this will affect that.
I wonder if... no, please, after.
Are you sitting on the same line?
If we have in our few minutes left, I'd love to pursue this because it is a terribly...
Well, I wanted to ask you about a little more about Afghanistan and your reaction to the problem there, and how you feel, what can be done? I mean, what would you like to see?
Well, I think our position on Afghanistan is quite clear, and we feel that the foreign troops from Afghanistan should be withdrawn, and the people of Afghanistan should be left on their own to choose their system, political, economic, and government system.
Well, I think the obvious other question is Iran. I think your foreign minister in Islamabad in July did say that he thought the situation in Iran was a threat to regional security. And I think there was the idea of setting up a contact group to help solve that problem. What has been the latest news on that?
Well, I precisely don't know, but I think they are making all efforts to work out some understanding with the present Afghan people or government. I don't understand. I don't have the exact information, but they are approaching in various ways to realize their objective.
My question gets back to what the UN is doing here in the special session. I think most people have the assessment that not much is going to come out of it, which leaves Pakistan or Bangladesh very much in a situation like a lot of developing countries. Insufficient assistance from the North or concessions by the North, and probably not much from OPEC. What does a country like yours do then, given the inflation rate, given the world economic crisis? And if you could also follow that up on what do you tell the world in terms of the things you are doing to meet your own energy needs within Bangladesh?
Good, I think that's a very good question. It's a very difficult problem, let me tell you. But this should not dishearten us. There should be less of pessimism and more of optimism, and we should move forward and negotiate, carry on with the dialogue, talk, and find out formulas which could bring better results in this. As far as we are concerned, we are not sitting idle. We are developing our natural gas, and we have sufficient natural gas. I think in the near future we are going to sort of bring gas under more utilization. We may sell natural gas as LNG and use natural gas as CNG and things like that. And we are now exploring ourselves for oil. There's very strong indication that we have oil. And we hope in the near future we may have oil, we may get oil in our country. Then we have a huge reserve of coal in the northern areas of our country. and we're going to sort of exploit this coal mine. And we're working also on other form of energies to meet our present requirement and also the future requirement. But as time is passing, our own energy requirement is also increasing. So coming around that we got to do something so that the least developed countries do not come under so heavy pressure as a result of the increase in the price of oil. Because we really don't have the means to buy oil at such high rates, yet we need oil for our development.
Is the oil deposits that you have indications of, are they anywhere near this line of demarcation of the continental shelf with India? Because there are some people, perhaps not well-wishers of either India or Bangladesh, who would like to see a kind of dispute coming up on this.
I find your questions are one track, however. You see, we are looking for oil on the land. We have brought now our own rigs, and in a few months' time we would be drilling for oil on the land.
Mr. President, I'm afraid that's all the time we have today, which is a great pity. The clock always beats us. President Zayer, we have to close the show, but we want to thank you for being with us today to answer our questions on this edition of World Chronicle. Our guest has been Zayer Rahman, the President of the People's Republic of Bangladesh. President Rahman, here to attend a special session of the United Nations General Assembly, was interviewed here at UN headquarters in New York by Brennan Jones, correspondent for Interpress Service, the Third World News Agency, Peggy Wilkins of the International Staff of the Wall Street Journal, and Prem Shankar Jha, editor of the Financial Express of New Delhi. And I'm Brian Saxton, thanking you for being with us and hoping you'll join us again for the next edition of World Chronicle.
Transcripts of these interviews may be obtained without cost by sending a stamped, self-addressed envelope to World Chronicle, United Nations, New York, New York, 10017. World Chronicle is broadcast in developing and developed nations worldwide and features senior officials whose work is concerned with the developing nations of the world, in spontaneous, unrehearsed, unedited interviews conducted by reporters from press, radio and television. World Chronicle is a public affairs presentation of this station. It is produced by United Nations Radio and Television in cooperation with the UN's Division for Economic and Social Information. This is Tina Jorgensen speaking.